The first thing I would like to do is read the public comment statement, which is, no, the first thing I always do is for Steve. But see, you're usually in front of me.
Yeah.
Okay. I remind everyone that this meeting is being telecast and recorded on Channel 14. I also remind any member of the public who wishes to make an audio or video recording of the open session of this meeting to notify me first as chair. I will then inform the public of the recording as required by the open meeting law.
Yes, I'll be recording for the Falmouth Enterprise.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll get on to the first item on the agenda, which is public comment. Please limit comments to 2 minutes per individual to items not on this meeting agenda. There will be no debate or action taken on public comment items. The committee will take items under advisement, or the individual may request an item to be placed on a future agenda. Is there any public comment?
Terry, may I just speak a comment?
Sure.
I just wanted to think, with what we've gone on at T-Ticket over the last couple of years, I'm just thrilled that you guys are able to host us here, and it's a real tribute to the students, the teachers, the parents, and all the staff at T-Ticket. So kudos and thank you for hosting us.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so then before we begin our meeting, we'll hear our mission statement.
The mission of the Falmouth Public Schools is to educate students so that they are engaged in their education in a way which develops their capacity to pursue their goals and foster lifelong learning. The 3 core beliefs which define us as a school system and enable us to accomplish our mission are continuous improvement for students, teachers, staff, and administrators, enthusiasm for teaching and learning, collaboration in teaching and learning. The role of the school committee is threefold: to write policy, to approve the operating budget, and to hire the superintendent and support her in carrying out her initiatives for the district.
Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is supposed to be a report from our student advisory. She is not here tonight, but there are 5 minutes allowed, so I'm going to fill in for her. Okay, because I was at the high school last week, so I think I can do this. Perhaps the reason that we're glad that the students can take part in our meetings, but we have to remember they are phenomenally busy. Like this week, for example, grades close on Friday. It's MCAS testing. The band's going to Washington, D.C. The Spanish club, the Spanish students are getting ready to go to Spain. So all these things are going on there. And I wanted to say something about the student athletes who finished the fall and winter season. And I'm taking a quote from Lori's report that she sent out about not only did they make many playoffs, they also had 50 students among all the students who played in the fall and the winter were on the high honor roll, and 210 were on the honor roll. So that's an amazing thing. All those kids playing sports and making all those honors. And I live smack dab next to the high school, and I love it because I can hear the band practicing in the fall. And this week, the new athletes are out there. The fields, all the fields are full of kids. I mean, the lacrosse fields are full. The girls and the boys lacrosse fields on either side of the school. They're playing softball. Baseball, I got to mention, I don't see them obviously because they're down at Gulf Fuller, but it's just great to see them all out there getting ready for the new season coming up. And the other thing I wanted to say about Falmouth High School was last Thursday. Now, I'm prejudiced in favor of this. I went to the French Honor Society induction, and they inducted 15 new members, and they have a total now of 31 members. And in this day and age, that's a good amount of kids to have in a French Honor Society, okay, considering that it's not as strong a language as it used to be, so that was great. And I'm also, I hope I'm not using up those 5 minutes, more than those 5 minutes. Some of the kids in their honor society went and read at the library on a couple Saturdays ago. The town-wide read is The Little Prince. I don't know if you're aware of that. We had many wonderful public officials there. The chief of police read, David Vieira read, our superintendent read, and we had French teachers retired and things we need. And we had these students, so I'm gonna take time, they gave time on Saturday to go down there and read in French, which is scary for those kids, in front of, college professors and native French-speaking people. These are the kids that read in public at the library. Ava Warner, Isabel Kroger, Nicole Fusaro, Molly Lebrun, Olivia DePunte, Alex LaRufa, Sage Getchell, Shutong Murray, Celeste Newman, and Isabel Kubrick. So I think we should all give them a round of applause. Okay, thank you for giving me that student advisory time to do those things. The next item on our agenda will be a presentation. It's the highlight on education.
Megan Conan, our assistant principal and special ed building administrator. So what I would like to highlight about the T-Ticket School is our sensory circuit. So if you can kind of recall, maybe in high school in your gym class, you competed in something like an obstacle course, and our sensory circuit is sort of similar to that. The purpose of the sensory circuit is to help students get ready to learn. So tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain a little bit about the sensory circuit. I'm going to show a couple of videos of the students in action in the sensory circuit. We even have some experts here to share with us their experience with the sensory circuit, and I have some staff members as well. And for anybody who might need a movement break, it's actually set up in the gym too. Okay, so go to the next slide. Okay, so the sensory circuit was created about 2 years ago to provide a format for the students to participate in the sensory-based activities to help with their self-regulation skills. Now, prior to that, we do have a sensory room here at the school, but we found that there were a lot of limitations with regard to staff being able to supervise students, so there were a limited number of students who could access that room. So the staff and the administration worked together, and what we did was we looked at our master schedule and tried to think of a way to add that additional time to provide the students an opportunity, more students, to participate in the sensory circuit. So the physical education classes, the first block of the day is set aside so that students can participate in the sensory circuit. So you might be wondering, why a sensory circuit? Well, of course, it does address the DESE standards, and there is also plenty of research to support that exercising prior to learning can be beneficial to all students. So I did pass out an article that is on your tables there, Youth Physical Activity, the Role of Schools. And I think some people might first think that the reason the students would participate in the sensory circuit would be to help for students who are really high energy and need to calm their bodies down. But what we found is there are quite a few students who also have more of a low arousal rate, and they need to participate so that they can wake themselves up and get ready to learn. So the sensory circuit is scheduled, like I said, at the start of the day. It's in the gym. The students actually set up the equipment before the school day. There are really clear rules and expectations for when the students enter the program. They all have a folder. They take out their menu of activities that they're going to work on, and they sign in, and they basically get right to their jobs. So this is what I just talked about. So the routine is the students enter the gym, they begin their activities, and then when they finish, they complete their menu of activities, and they check out with the gym teacher before they leave and return to class. So if you're kind of wondering what the activities might look like, there is a ladder. This isn't a vertical ladder, but horizontal on the floor. Some different size hurdles. There are station activities, so the students can do sit-ups and push-ups, planks and squats. There's some light weightlifting, a small trampoline, cardio step, and a running chute, parachute with the students attached to them. So these images in the middle are a replication of the paper that the students actually fill out when they finish completing all of their activities. So at this time, you can't see the bottom number there, but we have about 54 total participants each day. That number does vary. So the students age range from kindergarten up to 4th grade, and they're all different grade levels working at the same time. The students spend about 15 minutes in the gym completing the activities. That's okay, we're gonna go to the next slide. Sorry. It's okay. So the next part I'd like to show you is a actual video of the students in the gym doing the sensory circuit. I'm sorry. So here's the paper that I talked about that the students are filling out, putting their name and date on a sheet for each day they come in. Take notice of how serious the students are. This isn't an opportunity to engage in a lot of socializing. That's the step, cardio. This was a new purchase this year. Now you get to see it all in action. Now they're completing all the activities that they did for the day. And now we have a few testimonials.
What's your name?
Morgan.
And what grade are you?
Fourth grade.
And why do you come to the gym for sensory?
It helps me and us to focus on my work.
And how do you feel when you leave?
I feel better because I feel like I can just do my work and focus.
What's your name?
Jacob, Orchard,
Okay. And what grade are you in?
third grade.
Third grade. And why do you come to sensory in the gym?
So I can get all my energy out and when I come back to class I'll be ready for class.
Great. And how do you feel when you leave?
Good. Get all the energy out.
Good. What's your name? What grade are you in?
Second.
And why do you come to the gym for sensory?
Because so I can exercise.
And how do you feel when you leave? Good, great.
Okay. All right. So now, you can put the lights back on. You guys stand up for 1 second. Stand up, come over here, Kristen. All right. Okay. So, these are the real experts who participate, and they've all prepared a little something to share about their thoughts about participating in the sensory. So we're going to give each person a chance to talk. So go ahead, Kristen.
Hi, my name is Kirsten and I'm in 4th grade. I started going to Sensory halfway through this year. Sometimes I am tired when I come to school, and I wake up better when I do Sensory. Before I started coming to Sensory, I would stay tired and keep yawning all day. It is much easier to focus when I am feeling awake. I also feel ready for MCAS because I know that when I get my energy out, I will do a good job. My favorite part is the 10 jumps on the trampoline because I have a trampoline at home and I use it on the weekends too.
Nice job. All right, go ahead, Teddy.
Hi, my name is Teddy and I'm in the 3rd grade. I've been going to Sensory all year, but I started going last year in 2nd grade. Our teacher chose 4 kids from my class who get to go. When I first walked in, I was kind of amazed that I get to do this. It is different because we get to be with different grades too, and we don't usually do that in school. My favorite is the hurdles because there are 3 sizes and I get to race my friends. When I leave Sensory, I feel like I can focus in class better because I worked off my energy.
Nice job.
Hi, my name is Avery and I'm in the 3rd grade. I started doing Sensory last year. I was excited to see it at first because I never did an obstacle course like that before. When I first started, it was hard, like the big hurdles were hard to get over, but it got easier with practice. I like the whole thing, but the trampoline is my favorite. Sensory helps me to get my brain moving for school. Hi, my name is Anson and I am in the 2nd grade. I have been going to Sensory since the beginning of the school year because my teacher thought it was a good idea. At first I was confused, but Ms. Shanahan explained everything. Then I thought it was really great. Some days I am tired and when I come to school, and some days I am not. On my tired days, Sensory helps me get going for the day. The ladder is my favorite because I have to concentrate on which space I should go in.
So I would like to invite a few of our staff members over as well. So Ms. Clark is a 2nd grade teacher. Come right over this way. And Ms. Shanahan is our physical education teacher. And Ms. Lund is our occupational therapist. And I don't know if you would like to share your perspective as a classroom teacher, what it's like to have the opportunity to have the students participate.
Absolutely. Last year when it started, I rotated through my whole class to kind of see who could benefit. I looked for signs in the morning of sleepy kids being able to wake up, kids that were having some trouble getting to school on time, using it as an incentive. If you get to school on time, you go to Sensory. I also used it to get the wiggles out. So this year I chose a group of students for all the same reasons, and when I say they're waiting at the door, like jumping, I have one timekeeper who's constantly like, is it time to go, is it time to go? So now I have a timer alarm that goes off to make sure they don't miss a second of it. But it's a great way for me to see kids that they're excited about it, they are taking responsibility for it, and when they do come back, they are ready to learn. They're ready to go in the morning, and I think as adults, we know that it's important to get a lot of movement, whether in the morning or in the afternoon, and children don't always know that that can help them. So I feel like it's been a great opportunity to show these children and students that it's a great way to get your brain ready to start your day. So,
Yeah. Carrie, did you want to share?
Many of the schools have something similar to this, so you may have already heard something similar in other buildings. When I went to Sandy last year and we talked about the opportunity to do this, we really felt like we wanted to be able to target as many students as possible, rather than go through like a schedule of X amount of students and rotate them through. It doesn't work for every child. We've had kids come and teachers will say, you know what, it's not, they really want to miss their work, or so it doesn't work for every child. So we really do need to experiment with different kids, and I think that's worked well. In the second grade has done a really good job with that. And I look forward to it every day. Avery and her cousin, who's a kindergartner here, they are staff children, so they set up for me every morning. So when I arrive, it's already set up. So that's great. And then the fourth graders stick around, help the younger kids with the parachute, because that can be tricky, and they clean up. So they definitely have taken ownership. I don't do it on Thursday because I have common planning in the morning, and so you may speak to that Thursday.
I always say Thursdays is a long morning. I do notice the difference. It just seems that the kids it can be more difficult to get them motivated to get their day started. So I definitely notice a difference on Thursdays, which I've mentioned before.
All right, so Ms. Lund, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, I just think it's a wonderful asset for the school. I think it's an OT. I just think it's a wonderful sensory experience that the kids can start out with. And I also just think that Carrie has done such a wonderful job at creating it, but also managing it. And she can have over 50 kids at times. Every kid knows what they're supposed to do. They're paying attention to their own bodies. You have different grade levels. A kindergartner, waiting for the trampoline with a fourth grader. And I just think she's just running a very tight ship, but she's really taught the kids to be responsible for their own bodies and get themselves ready for learning. And I think it's a great asset for the school.
All right. So does anyone have any questions for the students or the staff? Yes.
So I have a couple questions. How long out of class are the students?
So we have breakfast also in the morning. So as the children go in, they check in, they do attendance. Some teachers will send them right to me. Some will stay and have a snack. It depends on the child, to be honest with you. I'd say anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes. Some kids will linger, and I'll say, it's time to go. You got to get going. Thank you for offering. So I'd say 8 to 10 minutes.
Okay. And I think you answered my next question on who decides which kids. It sounds like you're doing a really good job rotating them through to kind of experiment.
Any teacher can refer them.
Okay. And it's from K to 4?
Correct.
Okay. So I just have a couple of comments. As a mother of a child who constantly wiggles, I would like to see this as a district-wide thing. It has been a challenge, and I am going to try really hard not to get tearful because I can tell you how important it is. There was an initiative at East last year that I think Mr. Watson did a great job. I really wish that it was followed through. I am so impressed. Another note I would like to say, why am I not surprised that you're in charge of this? You initiated the grab and go, and now look where we are with that. I can't give you enough applaud. I can't admire you more. I think that you're doing a great job.
So what we'd love to see, Dr. Dewar, or maybe some piece of time, 20 minutes in the middle of the day. As you know, 9:15 is great, but by 1 o'clock, or maybe some scheduling with reset, being able to give them that afternoon, or at teacher's discretion. This class needs to get outside and run the track. Let's go. We're going 2 laps. But it can't be necessarily policy. It's got you at the discretion of the teacher, I think. Every class is different. Some years are different. And so, if anything, we need more movement in the afternoon as well. But thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Don?
Yeah, just a comment that I love the fact that they're incorporating it at home too as well. Because anytime you can reinforce the different activities, both home and away at school, it's great and just solidifies it.
Okay. Oh.
No, I was gonna say maybe we could, we have.
I was just going to compliment the students. I think you guys did such an amazing job preparing for tonight and showcasing what a wonderful things that your school has to offer. Great job.
Well, I'll thank everyone for coming tonight, and thank you very much to all the parents too who brought the students tonight, and thank you to the staff for participating as well.
They're all very good readers too.
They are very good readers.
Leaders, yeah.
You guys are all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christian.
Okay, next on our agenda is a presentation of the strategic plan review. Roy, our superintendent, will be presenting this.
There was nothing in our packet for this.
You're getting it right now.
Those words that I was not prepared.
We wanted to surprise and wow you. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Steve.
Okay, so some of you will remember that last August I laid out the plan for the Listening and Learning Tour and the reports out. And so we completed the Listening and Learning Tour. My amazing team actually went through all the data, and then in December, gathering all that data from the students, the parents, the community, staff, and administrators, and then we reported out all that feedback, right, about what's going well and some changes that people would like to see. And so then my next benchmark was to make sure it became a meaningful part of our strategic plan. And so we have taken all that data and we've worked to provide you with the one-page overview. And so Dr. Tellier and I will go over that now. I'd like to point out that, as you know, the new tagline, "A Community Committed to Excellence, Every Student, Every Day," we've enhanced the community part within because we really believe, and that became obvious through these months of this Falmouth community so supports the schools in so many different ways. And also the Every Student, Every Day. And I was very pleased that everybody really do believe that every student can achieve, can be, happy, healthy, and well. And so you'll see that every student, every day throughout this document, but we won't necessarily point that out. But that equity piece for everyone, and just that every student has opportunities is certainly a theme throughout. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Tellier with the theory of action.
Thank you. So at the top of the one-page document we just shared with you, in the theory of action is an if-then statement. If we perform in a certain way, then we will expect to have a certain outcome. So on the sheet in front of you, you can see that if we foster an ongoing student-centered professional dialogue, if our actions and all of our work around those actions is focused on our students, then we'll also have a practice that aligns our teaching and learning through increased meaningful collaboration, elevated student learning, and will support students through increasingly personalized instruction. That's all part of that if. It's a pretty big if, but if we can achieve all of that in a complementary design, then the outcomes for students. We will create a world-class learning experience through which our students will gain the critical knowledge and skills that empower them to be competitive in college and career, as well as become active in the global community and socially conscious citizens who understand the actions and reactions of the world around them. And so we're also replicating that if-then statement in that last part of our theory of action, that students will understand the actions and reactions of the world around them. And we're also using part of the language for our overarching objective in our joint work with the Woods Hole professional community to bring that up and to really extend that across all of our work.
Before Dr. Tellier begins with our first strategic objective, I just want to add too is that I said it when I first arrived, and I continue to say we had a strong strategic plan all along, and so adding in has only enhanced what was already just super quality work from the district prior to this. So, okay. Teaching and learning.
So the framework is broken into 4 strategic objectives. I'm going to start in the purple column and talk about teaching and learning. There's not much that's deviated in terms of how the objective was originally presented, although there's 2 words that we've particularly selected to put here, and those are dynamic and visionary. And the idea that our curriculum is going to change. It's going to be adaptive to what our what is demanded of our students to know and be able to do. And that in part, that also means that it's visionary. Sometimes we have to be, hopefully, a step ahead, or expecting our students to be a step ahead and then partner with us in determining the direction in which we're going to go. So that being said, the strategic objective, or excuse me, the rationale that follows, sorry, you have it in front of you, there's extra copies. This is going to be a little bit of one of those eye tests.
Yeah.
Teaching and learning is the heart of what we do. And so you can read through the language that's there that's been standing, but I'd like to direct you to the second half of the statement. While we believe that high quality instruction will yield high quality results, we guide our students to achieve academic success in a manner that embraces their learning as an opportunity to take risks, learn from the mistakes, and grow as unique individuals and citizens within a larger community. So we've really tried to embed in here the growth mindset and the idea that it's okay for students to not always do things right the first time, but to fail forward, not backward. Embrace that, figure out what didn't quite work, and move forward with deeper learning. All right, and Microsoft Word in its different versions wants to split our document up. If you flip on the reverse side, just to continue down that process of talking about teaching and learning, you can see the teaching and learning, which was originally broken into 4 areas of focus, is now broken into 6 concentrated areas. Starting with curriculum, in particular the new piece there is in the latter part of the focus area about curiosity and framing some of the work that we would like to be doing with maker spaces and having our students tinkering and designing and creating, and in some cases without a clear plan, as we saw in the demonstration with the presentation from our library media teachers earlier this winter. Instruction, really what we want to call out here is the focus on the word blended. We're really reaching into the work that we've been doing with the Tech for Learning Steering Committee this year, which is comprised of teachers, administrators, members of the school committee, and we've really been digging in deep and talking about what needs to change and how we deliver our instruction to make sure that students are ready for that ever-changing landscape. And also the work within how we're adjusting and growing in instruction also directly connects to the conference and the professional learning in which Lori and I are engaged through digital convergence. All of that coming together to really make sure we're elevating student learning experiences. The assessment focus area has not changed considerably. However, we don't want to take it out because it's part of what we're doing all the time to get that data to drive the decisions we make in the best interest of students. College and career readiness, particular focus here is fostering exploration and creativity and having increasingly personalized opportunities for students to explore their own interests, and how that's going to take shape over time is going to be part of the related actions. And then 5 and 6 here are brand new. 5 being expanded offerings for arts and sciences directly drawn from the feedback that Dr. Dore received in the Listening and Learning Tour, and as considered and analyzed through the central office workshop, and then shared out with administrative council. And then finally the last piece on collaboration, which is going to be echoed across the other focus areas and across the other strategic objectives, because no one person can do the work alone, and we all have to bring our different interests together to the table.
Okay, so the access, equity, and opportunity strand existed prior, and we made a few adjustments here. We're really emphasizing under the strategic objective about equitable access and a breadth of opportunities. So really expanding opportunities for all students and the type of opportunities students will have. And what that means is that we really need strong systems of support and just inviting an inviting atmosphere that allows students to be able to have that student choice and voice in their interest and the opportunities that they would actually want to choose. And I'm just going to scroll down here. So not a lot changed here, just making sure that we were responding in a timely manner to new health concerns and existing epidemics. So we know that when I kind of came in, the vaping actually kind of exploded, and so we certainly had a focus on that. So any new thing that actually is a health concern, we definitely want to address and make sure that we, from an educational focus, that we're either helping students and families around that. Also in number 4, we added the Grow Equitable Opportunities for high school students to enroll. So we want to broaden the students, be able to support students in honors and AP courses, making sure that those are, that access is actually there for all students. And then the expanded opportunities that we talked about, more that hands-on authentic learning. We want to look to be developing new pathways, again, so that students have more hands-on experiences in areas in which they choose and are interested in.
The third is the last of the existing objectives from the former strategic plan or the framework for student success. And one of the ways that we've adjusted this is to call out the work around civic engagement, an appropriate topic for this evening. And then also to talk about the wellness of every student, to bring it beyond talking about physical, social, emotional, and mental health, but then amplifying that to exactly what is wellness and how all-encompassing it is for our students. So in the focus areas section of community partnerships, numbers 1 and 2 are exactly as they previously appeared, but 3, 4, and 5 are where we spend some time really looking at the feedback and carefully considering it against the action plans for the next year in our work. So number 3, the student engagement with professionals, you can really see that called out in the work that we're doing with the joint meetings with the Woods Hole professional community. Our next monthly meeting is tomorrow. But number 4 also connects to that, but stands on its own, the environmental consciousness and just the awareness, again, to the actions and the reactions that each individual and then each collective group has with the environment. And the relationships, partnering with volunteers and mentors to model positive relationships. Ultimately, the part that we were trying to capture here in echoing the every student every day is that we had so many great opportunities that were happening in areas that we were seeing wonderful successes for few students that we want to scale so that we can see that increasingly happening for more and more and more students, so that truly every student has an opportunity to engage with a community partner.
So to round out the framework for student success, we did add a new strand, Foundation for Excellence. And this is really focused on the effective operations and equitable resource allocation. I think what we want to stress here is that we're looking at all operations that support our teaching and learning. And so priorities are set because this is a new rationale, the new why of why. I'd like to actually read this piece. Students are nurtured throughout their enrollment to develop into happy, healthy, and informed members of our community. Our district determines the conditions for such excellence through its intentional design as learning organization. Therefore, our culture, structure, and processes facilitate ongoing student, adult, and organizational learning to realize our primary mission of teaching and learning, the heart of what we do. And so we want to make sure that every decision that we're making is focused on teaching and learning for students. And so obviously this is all new. We did have a communication section before, as we mentioned. This just expands that. Collaboration, resources, operations, staffing, making sure that we are focused on a diverse staff that actually represents our student population in the district. I want to specifically point out number 6, the data-driven, to improve ability to collect, analyze, and share data. So there are areas in which we could enhance our data-driven processes. For instance, we've talked before about the student discipline data. And so we're looking at systems so we can be more effective and make better decisions around student data. If we don't have the data, then it's just kind of perceived, and we really should be making all decisions. And so using those same practices across many different operations within the district. And then certainly promoting that professional culture that we explained in the why. But also, number 8, the expectations and accountability. Readily articulate the look and feel of the unique student learning experience to identify standout features of Falmouth as district hallmarks. And so with that, we'll end. We think this is a very special district, and we feel like this enhancement to our strategic plan really reflects the new thinking. Thank you very much.
Did anybody want to make any comments or questions?
I like the thought of it's okay to fail forward. It's okay to learn, it's okay, you didn't fail 10 times, you figured out 10 times how not to do it. So I would like to see that fostered. Great job.
John?
Just a comment like when we do, sometimes when there's not a whole slew of questions or comments, I always want to make sure people know that that's not reading anything into it. A good amount of it is because of your tremendous communication that you have, that we're all on the same page, and I'm sure that a lot of folks, including myself, feel very strongly about it.
Thank you.
Okay. The next thing on our agenda will be a presentation of the superintendent summative evaluation process.
Lucky Leah is not here, so I guess we'll try and muddle through this. Oh, I better keep one. Oh, no, I have one, sorry, I'm losing my mind. Okay, so for almost everyone, this is not our first time through this, so hopefully some of it will feel familiar. Obviously, it's like probably the most important thing that we do all year. So, so each school committee member prepares thanks Sharon, prepares a end of cycle summative evaluation. So we each do our own, and that is supposed to be an assessment of the superintendent's progress on goals, performance on each of the standards that are listed in the evaluation, the overall rating of performance, and the impact on student learning. So those are all the pieces that are in this actual document. And to do that, we do a couple of things. We look at the binder, which is already assembled. I went through it last week. It's very much the same as in previous years, where you can go through and look at all the things that have happened this year. And then also using other committee, your observation and the observation from other committee members. So I'm not sure how many we actually have. They're due the end of this week. So whatever we have collected based that are observations of the goals, we'll use those because they provide really robust information on those particular goals, and then any other relevant information that you think is relevant in filling it out. So the school committee designee, who is Leah, takes all of that information, all those individual evaluations, and puts them all together into one summative evaluation. And the weird thing, and I think Leah will talk about this when we present the summative, is that it's based on a preponderance of evidence. It's not the average. So it's really taking every person's individual comments, individual goals, or individual rankings, and putting them together for each goal. Then that's presented to the superintendent by Leah. They'll have a meeting that's just the two of them to go over all of the comments and evaluations, and then that summative is then presented at the school committee meeting, and we vote on it. So I just put in a couple of notes at the end on things to remember. So I did these in the wrong order, but the first thing is that the first page that has Laura's name on it is actually the page you do last. I don't know why they did it this way, but this is just how it is. So you actually skip the whole first page and go to the performance goals for each individual section and do it in that order. Otherwise, you can't do the first page. The other thing to remember is that proficient is a perfectly good score. So or MET, I guess it should say MET, is a perfectly fine score. That everything has gone well. The exceeded is reserved for extraordinary performance that would be a model for other superintendents. So
I know. It's important, I know, but it's.
Are you warning her?
I don't want you to ever be upset, I know. But it actually is, because you wouldn't want, if you were to get met or proficient, you would think I was doing it, I did a terrible job, but it's actually a really good score. One thing that I didn't realize until I opened it last year is that you can actually check on all the boxes in Word, and it'll double click. If you double click, it'll make the box for you. I went through and tried to create an X for all of them, so I thought it was helpful. And that these are all public information. There's opportunity to put your comments in every piece, and Lori will get a copy of your exact evaluation, so she will have all of your comments to read, even if they don't all make it into the final summative document. Trying to think what else. So the goals are already in here on page 3. Lori's goals for the year are in here. So the new superintendent induction program, maintaining momentum during the transition, and effective entry and direction setting are already in this. And I'll send you this electronically so that you can actually type in all of your comments for each section without having to write it all out. And I'm trying to think of anything else. Any questions about it?
Can you go back a couple of slides to the must thing? No, the next one, that one. That's for the overall score, right? That's not each individual thing, correct?
So if you were to give, let's use an actual example. So if you were on page 2, if you were rating overall performance of anything except for proficient, you would have to write a comment.
Okay, but it's
as to
the
why.
overall score, not each individual.
Not from the ones where it's met.
Yeah, because that would be me writing.
Oh, no, okay, so yes,
It's
like on
not
page 3 you mean?
It's not each score, it's just the overall.
So on page 3, if you can put any grading you want, there's no box for comment?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so it just, you don't have to write for every single thing you enter, it's just. the
No, but
overall.
on the pages that have boxes for comments, if you rank other than proficient, you should write a comment as to why.
Page 4, 5.
So most of them have
4,
that,
5,
yeah.
6, and the top.
Yeah. And so, and of course, Leah's really good at this, so if you have questions, I'm sure she'd be happy to help. Terry's done it a long time, I'm sure she'd be willing to help, and of course, I'll try and help as well. But really, reading through this, and then sitting with the binder and jotting down as you go is, for me, the easiest way, and the observations are hugely helpful. So I will, the deadlines, like we said, for the observations are the 30th. What's the matter? 2 binders. Sorry. I only went through 1, I think. I'm gonna have to come back.
Actually 3.
And then the final deadline to email your individual evaluation is the 7th, on Sunday the 7th, so that Leah has Monday to put it together before meeting with Lori. And so I will email everyone this file as a Word doc so that you can type in it, and the full goals that Lori gave us at the start of the year, so you don't have to look for them. And it has more detail in it other than just saying entry plan. It'll have more detail about what that looks like. And I'll also send you the electronic version of the guide to filling this out, so you can use that as you go along. That's it.
You'll probably have questions, maybe not now, but when you start doing it, so.
Yeah, I mean, just don't leave it to the very last second, because I always have questions. And I know as I went through the binder, I had questions that I wanted to ask Lori, and it's just easier to do it ahead of time.
Okay, well, thank you to you, thank you to the whole committee. It's a lot of work, and to Sharon, as ever, for compiling those binders.
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Sharon.
Okay, next item on our agenda will be to meet our legislators. So,
Oh, I guess it's a BYOC, yeah.
We got you guys.
So maybe I see the house.
This is very nostalgic for David because he spent a lot of time in detention here.
Back in my so, this is where they used to stick me after school when I didn't have the ability to run before class.
Is that why you got so many detention?
Yeah. If we had that program, it might not have been a problem. I only stayed because I wanted to see, remember Martha? Jack Oser had an iguana in his office, and so all the kids wanted to stay so you could play with the iguana after school. Martha.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming, and maybe you could introduce yourself, and I don't know if you prepared a statement, or do you expect us to ask you questions first, or how do you want it to work?
Again, yeah, we can probably wing it, but I'm Vinny DiMacedo, and I'm the state senator from the Plymouth and Barnstable district, which goes from Falmouth all the way to Pembroke, kind of long strip all the way up. And first, I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate you. The other day, I saw your presentation in regards to the civics education program and how you've implemented that. And to say I was impressed is clearly an understatement. It was really, when you talk about legislative intent, what you're doing here really filled the legislative intent. And I was incredibly proud of the town of Falmouth and all the effort and time that's gone into that. And I really believe it's going to show some serious fruit. So to that extent, just wanted to say that. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues. And then, hopefully we can open it up maybe for some questions. I think some of the big things that we're going to be talking about might be the whole concept of what's happening with Chapter 70, what's happening with the Promise Act, and what do we see, what do we see as the challenges. We'll give you our best, our best estimate. That being said, the issue of Chapter 70 and the education funding formula has always been a challenge and continues to be a challenge. There's not an easy fix for it. I do think something's going to happen this year, but we'll get into that in a little further. So now I'm going to turn it over to my other Portuguese legislator, David Vieira.
I'm Dave Vieira from T-Ticket. Grew up on the property line, actually. My grandfather was going to build a driving range, the golf course around the driving range, but then in the 60s, the town decided they wanted to build the elementary school, so we sold a little piece of that land so they could continue to have the playground out in the back. So, but I wasn't districted to be here at T-Ticket, even though I lived right on the property line. I was supposed to go to Mullen Hall. And so we came down, we had a talk with Dr. Antonucci, and he said, okay, you can go to T-Ticket. So, as the senator said, big focus this year is the foundation budget review implementation. Sam Patterson, a town selectman, former member of this committee, came to Boston to testify last Friday. Unfortunately, it was a long day, and he had to begin his return trip, so he submitted the testimony, but he was there for the majority of the day to see what was happening. And we have, some competing concepts. One, which is the Promise Act, we have this vision with no detail. The other one, we have a little more detail and a little bit longer time frame. And then the third is the governor's proposal, which is we're in the first year with House 1 of implementing over 5 years the full recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Committee with no new revenue, to take growth in revenue and to take priority within the budget plan and to implement, as we did with the Education Reform Act in 1992. We did a 5-year implementation of the original formula and the original funding plans. So those are the 3 proposals that are out there that are getting debated. The fact that there was a hearing in a committee on a particular bill this early in the session, the 2-year session, means something's going to happen this year, because we can't run the clock out. When you do it at the end of the second year, you're up against the clock. And sometimes they put it there so that the clock runs out. The fact that this has happened early gives us a lot of confidence that it'll happen in this session. Something will happen. So we hope that you all stay engaged with that process as it goes forward. And we'll feed off when we get more details, emails and things, and saying, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? If you look at this year's House 1 budget, Chapter 70 numbers for Falmouth, they're level from last year. Okay? They're level from what was on the cherry sheet from last year. And the reason for that is this 5-year roll-in that the administration is looking at is front-ending those communities that have the largest gap between the current formula and the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review formula. So that giant sucking sound I always talk about, where all the money goes to Boston, is going to Boston, Worcester, Springfield in the front end of the plan, and then to make the implementation throughout the Commonwealth in the later years. So look forward to working with you all on that, as well as continuing to implement our civics education law and some of the exciting things that we're doing around science with a lot of the staff in the district and the institutions in Woods Hole.
Great.
And I'll hand it off to the other Portuguese
Portuguese.
legislator from Falmouth.
Dylan Fernandez, state rep for Falmouth, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Cuddy Hunk, one-room schoolhouse over there with one student in it, the last student that was graduating this year. I grew up in Falmouth, went to Falmouth Public Schools for most of my life, small stint at Falmouth Academy, but we don't have to talk about that.
You came back.
I did come back. I did come back. And so there's, you know, as Vinny and David said, an education bill is coming this session. It was what some people would say a failure of last session, and that it kind of fell apart in the last days of session last year. And so this year it's become a real priority. There are 3 competing proposals. I don't think any one of them, as they're currently written, is going to be exactly what comes out at the end. And so having feedback from this school committee as to which proposal you guys like the best, which one helps Falmouth the most and helps the Cape and Islands the most generally, because I think Falmouth is in a very similar situation as many other school districts in our region. And so, when you look at education funding and the foundation budget, it's just changed. Costs have changed so much in the past 20, 25 years. And you guys all know this, right? But healthcare costs have gone up exponentially compared to what they used to be, and that hasn't been accounted for. The cost of educating English language learners has gone up, and that has not been accounted for. The cost of special education has gone up, that has not been accounted for. And a number of other things. You could tick down a list from, the amount of technology that's in classrooms these days that wasn't there in the 90s when I was 4 years old, when they did the original foundation budget review, has changed dramatically.
And I was starting in the legislature.
Yeah. Here's my senator.
I was graduating from Falmouth High.
Yeah, there you go. And so we haven't, this formula, although it was incredibly innovative at the time, hasn't kept pace with the realities that many school districts face. And Falmouth has a lot of challenges as well around low-income students and the high percentage that we have here. It's slightly below state average, but almost exactly the state average. ELL students is growing rapidly in Falmouth, although it's still a small percentage relative to some other districts. The amount it's growing it's almost doubling every 2 years, and that'll only go up. Nantucket's actually the only school district in the entire Cape and Islands that's gaining students. It's almost entirely ELL students, and so they're actually around 25%. I think you guys are well below that, but it's still climbing rapidly. So accounting for that, and all of these things are taken into consideration in the different formulas. And so just looking at what kind of what the status is now, and then also projecting out what you think the student population will be 10, 20 years from now, based on trends, would be really helpful for us in terms of which proposals we want to put our thumb on to move forward in the legislature. Okay. Should we open up for questions, or should we just do a free-flowing thing here? Yeah.
One thing, I don't know if all of you were there at the legislative breakfast that the collaborative put on. The dynamics of the millennials who don't live on Cape Cod is something that we have to deal with too in all these.
I hear you.
Besides the money for education, can you keep those bodies here.
No, and that's not, I think we probably
I could
all
take-
read the story today in, in regards to the fact that we have this huge population shift. We're losing a lot of young people, and it's significant, not only through education, but through the realities of the cost of living here. I think Superintendent Dutch really hit it on the head, that the world's changed, because the value of these homes have increased, specifically because of Airbnb, because you can take that into an equation of, can I afford this? I can buy this home and maybe I can rent it out for a month or two in the summertime, and then I can go on vacation and make a living, and all of a sudden a house that was $450 could be worth $550,000. And that, of course, makes it so much more challenging for people to stay here. And Dylan, we do joke a lot about this, and I was kind of lucky I got in the early end of it. But for younger people, and for having two married daughters, I'm worried about them, because I want them to stay close. And I just had a conversation with my daughter the other day that they're looking at, and her husband's a teacher, and they're looking at New Hampshire as a reality. Of course, as you can imagine, as a grandfather, we're not too excited about that. We want them close, and we have to try to make a way. I do think that what we did in regards to the Airbnb legislation, in regards to addressing the issue of that 2.75 to address wastewater, is going to make a big difference. And the reason that is it's going to allow us for more density, to be able to build more homes on the properties here, because of the challenges of the contamination through nitrogen loading and the like. So to that extent, that's kind of how we're addressing it. We need more housing. More housing keeps the prices, lower competition, and that will help keep the millennials here. There's a whole host of other reasons, but that is one of them that I think we've kind of addressed, and we did it cooperatively, despite a variety of political philosophies here on Cape Cod. This Cape Cod delegation, from Julian Sear all the way up to David and Dylan and myself and Sarah Peak and Tim Whalen, we all worked together to try to find a consensus. And in doing that, we basically carried the ball on that issue. And I think it's pretty significant. It's a $4 billion problem on Cape Cod. And I think that legislation helps solve it. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it's going to make somewhat of a difference.
I think another one too is that the value, as Vinny was talking about, those properties going up. We have a different estate tax transfer law in Massachusetts than the federal law. And as these properties that are passed down from one generation to the next that are a family home, it's sort of like what we saw in the Midwest with the family farms, right? All of a sudden the family farms became so valuable that when they get transferred to the next generation can't afford to pay the taxes on the value. I'll give you an example. This is the reason why T-Ticket Park today is T-Ticket Park. In 2010, my grandmother died on September 10th. That was the year, you might remember, we all got little checks back from the federal government for like $300 and something because the income tax was retroactive. That's when they increased the estate tax transfer effective January 1st. My grandfather bought that property in the 1940s, opened the business in 1951. By the 60s, there was no mortgage on that property. And when the estate tax came in, when my grandmother died, the taxes exceeded the value of all of the residential properties that the family lived in. And so we had to sell, just to stay afloat, because we couldn't run the business and pay that amount of taxes on the transfer. Had she died January 1st, mini golf would still be next door. So we've got a bill in the legislature to bring the state transfer up to the level of the federal government and to peg it at that so that it moves with the federal tax law, so that when folks have property value, the property rich but income poor, they can pass from one generation to the next the residential properties.
I actually, as a Democrat, have a state tax bill that doubles the threshold, which a bunch of my right-leaning colleagues have signed on to. But it's a real problem on the Cayman Islands just because of our really high property values here. But to Vinny's point, I mean, three things on. I mean, millennials, we need a place to live. right? I'm a state rep. I rent here because I can't afford a home in my own district. Falmouth is the most affordable part of my entire district by far, and it's still profoundly unaffordable to many people. And so, you know, we need higher density because we need more units. We need higher density, especially in downtown areas where there's access to basic services like, you know, transportation and shopping and the like. But in order to do that, in order to build that, you need wastewater infrastructure. And so that's really the first step that we already covered this past session in terms of creating a fund for wastewater infrastructure. Now this session, another bill that we're going to take up that I'm pretty certain this is going to come up this session and probably pass some iteration of zoning reform. That's one of the other pieces, along with education last session, that kind of fell on the cutting room floor in the last minutes. And so we'll see kind of how this looks coming forward as well. But there needs to be zoning reform to a lot of towns have been really slow to implement higher density zoning in areas, and in some places in my district we have 3-acre zoning, which is you're never going to have high density units with 3-acre zoning. It's really a struggle to have high density areas with 1-acre zoning. And when you're thinking about preserving the green spaces that we love so much on the Cape and Islands, you know, you need to have higher density to allow for more units in one place and preserve our natural environment. And then the other piece to this is funding. And there's a number of different proposals that we have on funding. We are having a meeting next week with a bunch of folks from Boston and the Cape on a transfer fee on really high cost home sales, on people buying really high price home sales. And so we have a proposal that any person buying a home over $1 million would pay a very small fee to go towards, on that money, on that cost above $1 million to go towards an affordable housing bank in the local town. The local town would operate and administer. Normally, I'd say this would be a really tough proposal, just coming out of the Cape, but because this is a huge issue in Boston and Somerville, where there's a lot of many other state reps and state senators, I think this has a shot as possibly being a part of the broader housing bill that we have coming up. So more on that, but I couldn't agree more that we need to keep our millennials here and attract more of them.
One of the questions I have is, obviously we want to do something for education. We want to increase dollars and cents, make the whole process more accountable, and obviously make students in a learning position. How do we fund that? My initial thing is, because this has started in the 90s, and now we're at 2018, 2019, going into 2020, and I'm looking at budgets and saying, okay, how do we generate revenue to keep up with the educational world? And I think that's a big component. You know, we can take a tax off here and maybe support housing and stuff, but how do we support education in any forms of new revenue coming into the state coffers? You know, I think of the marijuana issue now. Where will those tax dollars go? I look at lottery situations. Well, what does the state get encompassing dollars and cents from lottery? And I don't know that because I don't know if there's a quote state lottery in that.
That funds most of the discretionary local aid.
Okay.
Versus the Chapter 70.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's about $1 billion that
Yes.
goes back.
It goes
They call it
to-
UGA, and it goes back to
Yes.
the cities and
And I
towns.
just think of, where do you generate additional revenues for schools when
Yeah.
we obviously project down the line? If we look at the governor's budget, I think it's a 5 or 6 year plan where we want to look at the special ed, we want to look at the ELL, we want to look at the disadvantaged, we want to look at college and different innovative situations. And over the long run, where is those dollars and cents going to come from?
Right. So
That's
that's
the
a
question.
great question, and this is the big ask, right? Because we have a Foundation Budget Review Commission that came out, I think in 2014, and said that we're underfunding our schools by a tune of somewhere between $1 to $2 billion. And we have a state budget that's roughly $40 billion. Over a half of that immediately goes to healthcare. And then you have a myriad of other costs that we need to account for. And so when folks are saying we need to have the most aggressive education bill that ups spending by $1 billion to $2 billion, I mean, that's the question, right? Where do we get the money? And when you have people, you know, when people are really strongly advocating for that, you know, my question back to them is, well, tell me what do you want me to cut, right? Like, what do you want me to cut? Do you want to cut healthcare from people? Do you want to cut these public services? And we don't want to do that, right? And so how do we raise new revenue? The proposal that unfortunately failed that came up in the legislature was the millionaire's tax, and that is a 4% increase on incomes over $1 million projected to raise around, I mean, there's different projections, but around $1 billion to $2 billion a year, and that money would go to education and infrastructure. That proposal was ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Judicial Court because it was a citizen's petition that said that it was doing two different things. It was one, increasing increasing taxes, and then two, allocating where those taxes go to. And if it's a citizen's petition constitutional amendment, it can only focus on one issue. And so that's why it was ruled unconstitutional.
And also,
subsequently,
the second issue, the Constitution prohibits the allocation from any entity other than the legislature. So
And-
you can't
yeah.
spend funding or control the judiciary under the state constitution.
And so subsequently, there's been a new proposal to amend the Constitution, and this is a legislative proposal. And a legislative proposal to amend the Constitution can do almost anything, right? And so this won't run into the same constitutional issues, but the problem is with changing the Constitution, it takes two different sessions. Sessions are 2 years, and so it's gonna be, I mean, I imagine we'll take a vote on this sometime this year, and then it's gonna be another at least 3-4 years before this kicks in. There's a host of other proposals to raise revenue, and you know, and there are several different bills out there that I'm supportive of, but that's kind of the main one coming down the line in terms of implementing this on a long-term plan.
Yes, Andrea.
I'm gonna kind of skip over the part where we always just say, and you know, first we have to put all this money toward healthcare without saying, why are we having to put so much money toward healthcare?
Healthcare reform is on the agenda too. The bill didn't get closed. The chairman actually passed away during the session in the House, and that slowed the release of the final bill, and then it couldn't get to conference. We actually changed the rules. I'm on the Rules Committee as well. We changed the rules this session to remove the arbitrary deadline of appointing, I shouldn't say arbitrary, the deadline that we put in to appoint conference committees, because had we not had that deadline, we may have been able to appoint in the spring a conference committee on healthcare and come to a resolution before the end of the biennial session. So we don't have that deadline this session, but the matter of fact, you're on financing that, right? Yeah, he's on that committee now too.
Good. Well, I'm glad that's being addressed. In terms of the foundation budget, we keep talking about the fact that we got to this point where we're desperate because we got in such a big hole. And there was such a long time before the review had happened, and even from that to implementation. So is there any way to do anything about that, assuming that something's going to happen now and then going forward, so we don't wait so long to get into a new hole that we don't know what.
I mean, ongoing review of the foundation budget, which was required in the initial law, and we ignored it for 20 years?
Maybe that's
Yeah, that was the law, but we ignored it for 20 years. And then we had to have a special bill to actually impanel a special commission to go and do what the initial bill said we were supposed to do as we implemented it. So, yeah, hopefully we'll just.
And Circle, the challenge is it's money, and there's no easy way around it because there are always competing interests. And I give you an example. You know, healthcare is incredibly important, and we've focused on that, and we put a lot of money. We're probably the most expensive state in the nation in regards to healthcare costs, but we also have the best healthcare. As far as education, I think, you know, despite all the challenges financially, it's hard not to suggest that if you look at the NAEPS tests across the board for the last, 10, 15 years, Massachusetts is the best. it is pretty impressive, but it takes money. And so everything kind of comes back to the dollars. And just my experience, just over the last 4 or 5 years, the kind of money that we've invested in the area of opiate addiction is significant, and it's, I mean, just game changer, doubled the amount of money that we've invested in the past. However, when we do that, we're taking it away from other things to do that. And of course, just going back, in my term, the kind of money that we spend on public safety now that we didn't spend pre-9/11 is just a reality. And so it's all of these new things that are really good. Everything's good. It's how do you pay for them? How do you have the best healthcare, the best education system, the best security, and be able to do that all within the same amount of dollars? Fortunate thing we have, I'm going to say, is our economy's strong. 3%, just barely over 3% unemployment. Virtually anybody that really wants to work should have an opportunity to work, and that's really encouraging. And I think that, so from that aspect, everything is going well and we're moving along. But to have all of these things, it does take money. And just from our experience, as easy as it says, well, we should tax a little bit more or do this, there are people on the other side who say to us, enough already. I can't take it anymore. Whether it's my property taxes, my income taxes, my sales tax, and all of it. And that's the challenge that we have, is to try to find that balance. And it's just not, it's not easy. I mean, you'd be amazed. And we took a lot of heat for the vote that we did on the Airbnb, because now people are going to be paying not only what they, they've had $1,500 for that weekly rental, they're now going to be paying, the town tax, which is going to be a revenue stream, the state tax, and then of course this water infrastructure tax as well. And I'm telling you, there's some people that are pretty hot about it. And how do we find that balance? So we try to do the best we can, and I think as a delegation, we've really tried to be balanced and understand that there's needs on both sides. And I know it's a really long answer to a question, but it always comes back to that.
And that's an opportunity that we had a discussion earlier, that now is the time for the Falmouth School Committee and the Falmouth Board of Selectmen and Manager to have a discussion about what are the allocation of those new revenues as they come in Falmouth. And is there the window to have a policy decision between the school committee and the selectmen as to where those resources would be allocated going forward? I'm the ranking member of the State House Bonding Committee, and with that, I'm on the Debt Affordability Committee. We set the recommendation at the beginning of the year for the governor. In the last few years, he's accepted our recommendation as to what the growth in bonded expenditures should be. We have been sort of conservative on that. We've done about $125 million increase for each year in the last 4 years, so that when the revenue grows and the Ways and Means, which Vinny's on, sets the projected revenue figure that the budget's built off of, we recommend that $125 million of growth in bonded assets be that, and not 250, which some people wanted and in previous administrations had happened. That eats up the revenue available to do things like implement these Chapter 70 recommendations if we're sending it over to the bond schedule and we have to pay bonds and notes with it. And so at Falmouth, you've finished now, the school, our town has finished going through all of the schools, starting in the elementary schools in the 80s all the way up through the Falmouth High School renovation. And Falmouth is beginning to retire debt from the earlier projects. And so this is conversations going forward. We've got the senior center going up. We've got some sort of final major infrastructure outside of wastewater that we're going to be projecting these debt windows. What do? Do we incur new debt, do a new building projects? Or do those revenues that are currently tied up for the purposes of capital expenditures become operating funds in the future? And those are policy decisions that the two boards have to have together.
And room rental, just quickly, is going to be the biggest windfall of money that the Cape and Islands see in a very long period of time. It's really hard to project exactly what they're going to be, but it's going to be really significant, and we won't know fully until until the end of next
Yeah,
summer.
half, yeah.
Until the end of well, probably until around, not this October, but next October, we'll really have a sense of how much money that is, but it's going to be a large amount of money coming back to the local towns. And I think Falmouth is at 4%, and it could go up an additional 2 if they wanted to have even more, a bigger bite at the apple in terms of more local revenue.
So these projects like this area here, this new sewer service area, so when this fund is available, municipalities like Falmouth can go and access the fund where the revenues come from the visitors that have stayed at Airbnbs, and won't have to go and take that out of the revenue of our town budget, which frees up those resources for things like education. And so that's how people go, oh, how's that sewer thing and Airbnb related to this? Well, we're taking those revenues and paying these notes. If we can pay these notes out of the trust, the revolving fund, then we can free up those revenues and make them available for operations within the municipality. But we need to review it on an ongoing basis, you're right.
David, I was gonna say, you should have been at our last meeting, the joint meeting. I suggested exactly what you said about having a set amount, a percentage, if we get new money. And I actually said, I'm gonna keep saying it in this amount, just to see if it sticks, is 60% for the schools, like some of our neighboring towns have. And I'll put a question to you, gentlemen, as far as the Foundation Budget Review Committee. So, are there checks and balances? And please describe to me if we defer to these folks and allow them to then redistribute money.
Well, they're gone.
They're gone.
Just
Okay.
ended.
Okay.
They issued a report 2015, the commission no longer exists.
Okay, so now as we do chapter 70 though, and we review that, what's the checks and balances to review that? Of which, within a legislator to say, all right, this
The
percentage, correct, yeah.
Yeah, so the revenue piece that's a function of the legislature. Then the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education runs the formula, makes the recommendation of what comes out the tail end of the formula, and then the Department of Revenue, DLS, the Division of Local Services, actually administers the program. So you've actually got 2 executive branch agencies in the legislature on an annual basis doing that. You see your Chapter 70 not as a check to the town of Falmouth, you see it on the cherry sheet. And so those cherry sheet balances by DLS have come from formula calculations within DESI, which have come from appropriations that the legislature has made to try to get the the output to be at the level that the policy target is.
Just to go back, legislatively, that's really kind of the concern of how, we're certainly going to put more money in education. Where are those dollars going? And I think if you saw the governor's plan, and he's putting in a significant amount, I think $200 million more, yet we're not seeing anything here. And our job is to make sure that, well, if we're going to be investing in education,
we get some too.
We have a responsibility to make sure that our communities are not left in the lurch. This is kind of the challenge. It doesn't matter if we're Republicans or Democrats. It's urban, suburban. That's the challenge that we face. And oftentimes the urban communities feel like they have more of the challenges in the ELL students, that the achievement gap, they have a bigger problem with the achievement gap. And we get that. At the same token, we're hearing from you, and you're saying to us, we're squeezed, we're tight. And so I'm not just going to, myself personally, not just going to roll over and say, okay, well, the money goes to the cities. I get it and I understand, but I have to also fight for my constituents. And I've always tried to make sure that, and suburban legislators have really kind of locked arms to try to push back, because that's good, we'll get left out if we don't. And when you see that formula that's out there, that formula was created back in 1993, and it was created and it benefited some communities more than others. We probably did okay here in Falmouth. Sandwich doesn't. You look at Sandwich, they're not very happy with the way it works.
How many of you remember that cities in Massachusetts were getting more than 100% of their education budget in the first year of implementation? The superintendent almost went to prison in one town because he redid his office 2 times in a fiscal year to try to spend all the money. It was 110% of the 120% of the annual operating budget of the school department. So you need money, here's the money, what are we gonna do? And there was no ability to sort of manage the money, right? It was like, whoa, we never had that much before, now what do we do? Meanwhile, we're getting a percentage down here in our communities, and some of these cities got a whole percentage, everything. Okay, here's your education budget and a little extra. what do I do with this money now? We don't want that to happen.
And you can, I mean, the proposals are all public, and we can send you a breakdown of each one and how they change the current formula.
Well,
and so
two
you can
of-
just
two of the three.
you can
The
just
third one
plug.
is-
I know. Well, we actually have a copy. You can plug in, and so you can just plug in Falmouth's numbers, and then get your and then once you plug in all the numbers of the different categories, ELL, low income, special education, all these other factors into the new formulas, you can see what the end result would be for Falmouth. And and I'd recommend doing that, right? There's actually several other cities and towns across the state that have already done that and looked to see exactly how much each proposal would bring back for their city or town. So I'd highly recommend doing that. And then the only trouble is that for one of the proposals, the House bill, the Tucker bill, which is very similar to the Promise Act that everyone was talking about, except that for the low-income students, instead of giving an exact figure, it kind of punts it to DESE to figure it out. But all the other numbers have really concrete changes.
Isn't it pretty much that we'll just get 12.5% no matter what? Is
Well,
a fair
that's not
statement?
necessarily a fair statement, because the legislative target in the mid-2000s was 17%. And we're at like 14.2 or something right now. So our target was 17, but we never made target. So the base was, like, we wanted to get everybody to 17. What are you getting in Barnstable? You doing any better than Falmouth? I haven't looked at the Barnstable numbers. I haven't looked at Barnstable numbers in a while.
Definitely not gonna tell us.
Maybe I'm the hall.
So that was sort of the policy target was that 17% implementation. You're going to hear a lot about charter school reimbursement going forward here as well, because there's another one where there's a target for whether you have the 3-year or the 5-year. The governor's plan shrinks it to 3, balloons it a little more in the front, but that's a policy. The legislature, we still have to appropriate enough money in that McKinney-Vento for your homeless student transportation. We've got to put enough money into those line items to be able to meet the policy target. That's been the challenge. And ceteris paribus, all other things being equal, the money goes to the cities.
You had had us allotted for 15 minutes. Having 3 legislators, if you could pull that off, so I don't want to mess up your schedule, but we could go on forever. So.
I know you could, and we love hearing it, and we did hear from you to contact you with our opinions, and thank you for.
David, that's you want to.
I'm joking. And I just want to give a shout out to Terry, who, when the Commonwealth had a crisis in the management of educational collaboratives, I was already on a number of committees, and they asked me to be on the special commission to review that and make recommendations for legal changes, and I wasn't able to do that. And I said, can I ask someone in my stead? And they said, sure. And Terry, being a member of the school committee and president, chair at the time of the Cape Cod Collaborative, did that on her own note. She went to Boston to all those commission hearings. She put together a series of recommendations with her committee, which became the law that tightened up how we manage educational collaboratives. So I just want to say thank you, because I didn't have the time to do it, but I wanted to make sure somebody from Falmouth was at the table.
I love going around the State House building too. Saying, I'm going to room such and such, and I know how to get there.
She knows the building better than I do.
Well, thank you. You brought Natalie, another person on our committee is familiar with the State House too.
Yeah,
so.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and I'm sure everybody will be honoring the honor to be in contact with.
Yeah.
Was it David? That what you guys?
We're good.
5, 4, 8, vote. That's my office number.
But that would be really, that'd be incredibly helpful, just to get feedback directly from you guys. And if you could take a look at the different proposals, if you need help taking a look at them, we can send along that information as well. And just letting us know which components you like, which components you don't like. Because we have an idea of that, but I think hearing directly from you would be really helpful. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
And don't forget the grant applications, Rod. If
Yeah.
there's any, not only hardware for school safety, but school culture improvements around safety, this funding is available until May 1st, I think it's the deadline.
Yeah, $8 million.
I'll just take it back out,
Yeah.
so.
Thank you very much.
Hey, John, how are you? Well, that's good to see you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. That was good. Hey, nice question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Is Dylan gonna do it?
Let's do this again sometime, guys.
I think he has. So can you send the links to the different
bills,
proposals?
proposals?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome. I want to send them to Sharon and then she'll make sure we get them.
Thank you so much.
Give it Beth.
So who should I send this to?
Sharon's gonna give you her email. Then she'll get them all.
He says you remember so.
Next item on our agenda will be to act on the North Falmouth PTO donation to refurbish the playground with soccer field, playground soccer field with artificial grass. And I presume Principal Adams will be.
Where would you like us to?
Maybe ask.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Voice that's behind.
Thank you for having us. I'm Michelle Bradley. I'm here representing the parent-teacher organization at North Falmouth Elementary School.
And Tim Adams, building principal. So we started last spring. It was a generous proposal from the PTO for some of the fundraising that's gone on. We've been working on our outdoor spaces for a few years now. First with updating the playground equipment in the upper and sort of lower areas of the school. And then we were granted funds through the Falmouth Road Race to do our basketball court area. Sort of one thing's led to another. It's like when you buy something new, then the thing you still have next to it doesn't look as good anymore. That effect has happened. And so we've had an area that students have played soccer on for years. There's 2 soccer net frames that are there and sand, basically. We've tried various, we've looked at it, trying to find various solutions to improve that surface because at this point, it's gotten to be very uneven. There's lots of stones down there. It's kind of unsafe. And when the weather is not cooperative, springtime rolls around, it becomes mud. It's virtually unusable. They still try to play down there, but it's not too successful. So we've tried to find a way to make this a much more usable surface, much safer surface. And so what we've come up with is some parents on our committee who are sort of expert in this area and came up with a proposal of how we could construct a new soccer field. It's not regulation size. And what it would include is 2 new nets, and artificial grass, which is different than artificial turf. It doesn't have any rubber pellet fill. It's used widely in schools, especially urban districts that they're kind of fenced in by a block where their whole school exists to have a playground area where kids can play outside. You really can't get natural grass to grow very easily. They use a similar type of product. People even use it for home use in their back, like sort of in cities, like as a patio area. It's basically a rug. And it does drain, it behaves like natural grass, just without any of the upkeep or the erosion. We met with the Department of Public Works and their Parks Department and trying to find a natural solution. How could they get grass to grow down there? And really just came to a point where it's never probably going to stay because of the way the hill works and the erosion. So I think we had some photographs. I don't know if they're coming up. Oh, you've got them in your packet, great.
Yeah.
So you see what the present conditions look like. And like I said, we're lucky enough that we have a parent who's been involved with this process, who's done similar field installations in other locations and is kind of expert with the material we'd be looking to use. And another family who's generously donated the labor. Also in your packet's a memo of understanding between the North Falmouth PTO, the Department of Public Works, and the school department around the who's responsible for what, essentially. So Department of Public Works doesn't have the ability to install this type of surface or maintain it, or eventually down the road remove it and replace it. So what the memo of understanding outlines is that those responsibilities, I should say, will fall to the North Falmouth PTO. That we'd be responsible for the initial installation, which will happen with donated labor, ongoing maintenance, and then eventually replacement when the life of the material runs out. Which the life of the material itself is rated for about 5 to 10 years if you're using it continuously as a play surface. That's if you're using it like as a rec league. constant games on it. So we expect to have a lot longer life out of it than what it's rated for typically. So that's the proposal. We're hoping, as soon as this, if it were to be approved, we can get started on installation in the spring. We're in the spring now, but shortly.
Okay, is there a motion to,
I'll make a motion to approve the North Falmouth Elementary School PTO's donation of a new soccer recess field.
second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Oh, no, now we have the discussion, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion on this? Andrea?
Yeah, so I wasn't familiar with the actual surface, the PT Pro. I couldn't
Yeah.
find much information on that. Do you know what that is composed of? I know you said there's no infill, so it's different than
Correct.
turf, but what is that made out of? What is the safety of that? Do you have any of that?
The exact composition of the grass itself, I'm not certain of, but it's safety rated the same as any kind of artificial playing field. It's very similar. It behaves like natural grass. We looked at it from a safety perspective as, what would be the give if kids are playing or sliding, and it's going to be a lot safer than what we currently have, which is very loose sand and there's lots of rocks, so all that would be moved away. And so it's relatively soft compared to what we have now.
And then you were talking about ongoing maintenance costs.
Sure.
So besides what does ongoing maintenance look like?
Right. There will be some help from the DPW if, for instance, there's a storm and lots of branches end up on the field. They do that for the entire property. They pick up large limbs and things. But when it comes to like excessive leaves and things like that, we or school maintenance staff would be responsible for sort of pushing that away. Or snow, if we want to play on it in the wintertime, they're not going to remove the snow, that sort of thing.
And then even something like gum, if gum got in it, you need to use like a solvent to get it out. So that would fall on the maintenance of PTO.
So this doesn't have anything that also has to be sprayed on it, or
No.
any of the heating issues, or?
No, it just takes natural rain mostly. Occasionally seams can be a little loose and there's materials that just kind of weave that back in. And we'd be responsible for doing that as well. Not you and I.
Did you get sort of input from the school community and the parents and,
That's
obviously?
actually what drove the whole project was their desire to do this as a parents group because it's such a popular area with the kids. And that they're frustrated by the fact that they're hampered in their use of it because of the way it's currently constructed. So it started with them, really.
Because I just know that, fields that, that there's a lot of issues with that, and I just want to make sure that the whole community at North Falmouth is comfortable with that.
Oh, yeah.
That it wasn't, okay.
Yeah, they're excited for the extra usage of it. Even on weekends, we have kids who show up, for pickup games and things. They'll have that available even when school's not in session, that they can come and use that. We saw that effect with the new basketball court. Actually, there's adjustable hoops for younger students in full size. And then just my recent experience this past summer being at work and there's no students, but I never had seen this in the past. Kids come and play basketball, and because there's a good court there, they're now showing up. So I expect a similar effect all year round now for this.
And then in terms of making everyone aware in our small village of North Falmouth, it's been on the parent-teacher organization agendas for the whole year, starting last spring until now. So every month we meet and it is an item on our agenda to discuss. So as you come to our meetings and see the minutes on the website too, it's definitely out there. And it's gotten a lot of great feedback from community members, but also parents in the village too. So it's really exciting opportunity for us.
Megan?
So we all know PTOs change and new people come in. Is there going to be anything written, in a PTO binder, or just saying that this is part of your responsibility now? Because I worry about that. I'm glad that you guys are so passionate about it, but who's to say in 6 years those people are going to be?
Budget-wise, it will be a line item in our budget. And then the board members change, obviously, every 2 years. But the chairs of the different committees can stay the same. And there's a chair for right now, like grounds. So they might be taking on this. If not, we'll have another group of families or a group of chairs that will take this on. And that can stay consistent for longer chunks of time.
John?
Just to kind of piggyback on Megan's point there, down the road, when the initial phase, the construction takes place and whatnot, and that's all covered insurance-wise and whatnot. I would just suggest that down the road, along the same lines as whether the folks are gonna be, budget-focused on it too, if you have some kind of a waiver or something, or talk with council of what, especially if they're replacing the whole field, and that's part of what they're, that's pretty involved, and we just want to make sure that we're covered on that.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, then we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the PTO donation to refurbish the playground, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're done in the background of this. Okay, so we will now we'll act on school choice numbers. Is Lori gonna?
Joan did the
Oh, Joan's
presentation
gonna-
last
Joan.
month. Are there any questions that Dr. Woodward could answer for you? And myself?
Okay. Well, the recommendation by Lori is to accept this, so is there a motion?
I motion that we accept the numbers that were presented by Joan at the last meeting for school choice.
Second.
Any further comments or discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
I will abstain based on the fact that when I brought up the opportunity for seniors to come into Falmouth as school choice, I strongly believe that we should change that and welcome them. I think that school choice is absolutely fantastic, and I think Falmouth has done a great job with it, but I will abstain based on the senior situation.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is to act on donation from the Falmouth Road Race for a school board, scoreboard. Hello, a scoreboard. Done a lot of talking tonight, I guess. Okay, so you have a picture of this? I don't know who's gonna talk, Lori?
So the road race would like to donate a scoreboard for our new all-purpose field at the high school. And the two pictures that are in front of you basically show the two scoreboards that have recently been donated, and they would be, similar in, as the picture shown. The cost of a scoreboard is around $35,000.
Next question.
Okay, we have to have a motion first.
Make a motion to act on the donation of Falmouth Road Race scoreboard at the field.
Second?
Second.
Okay, yes, Cal.
So I'm wondering, since because this is included, right, in what already went out to bid, this was included, so what happens to that? Can we amend no,
You don't need to.
we don't need to, it just comes in under budget and
It's a
we look
contingency.
good.
We look
Yeah.
for, well,
Okay.
we look for other ways to spend the money.
I'm sure we won't have any trouble doing that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're not paying for
Nope.
something and then not
Yes.
getting it.
No, not at all.
Megan?
Is it scoreboards?
No, scoreboard, one.
Do we have to select one of the two?
No.
Okay. Okay.
It's gonna be more like the second one. They just wanted to show that the last two, they
To cover
sent this
all.
picture that these were the last two, but it's definitely gonna be more like the 2018 scoreboard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these, just you have a point of reference?
Very good.
So this isn't exactly what it's gonna look like.
No, I think that they wanted just to show you, it may be, right, but if there's an upgrade or they'd be looking at the most recent edition, I think. They certainly wanted, to show, the donation at the bottom, how that was gonna be written, and that's such, that will not change.
Well, that's kind of my question, because if this is an exact example, and then we get it, and that's, 5 times as large.
I
So-
don't think they're that way. I think that history has proven to us that they're not looking to do something when our back is turned,
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that, but
No.
why not have the exact example, I guess is my question.
Maybe they're gonna go shopping and see what they can get for their money.
maybe they need to see because we're gonna have multi-sports on there, maybe they need to find a scoreboard that will accommodate all of the potential sports to be played on the new field.
So I think that, yeah, and I'm just gonna add, I think, again, what they were trying to show is that how they were putting the logo, it's been the same from the 2002, if that's, I'm not even sure that's that might be I'm not sure that those are exact, or those dates, or those, item numbers, I'm not even sure if that's it. So, but the last two have been, similar, and that they will stick to that similar, logo size.
John, did you want to say something before?
Yeah, no, just along the same lines. I'm very appreciative to the generosity of the road race, but I do, I know we've talked about having the percentages, and I don't know on the policy committee, I don't know if we've come to a conclusion of the size and everything. But separate of that, if the font could be the same, because I do find that jumps out at you, and I noticed that attending soccer games over at the high school, right over by the track, seeing the one sign, the bottom thing does jump out at you more because it's bold and it's thicker than the other. I don't know what fonts they are. And on a separate note, I don't mind it saying donated by Falmouth Road Race, but don't people get that, if the sign's on there, Falmouth Road Race, that means it was donated? Because I actually think if you took the road race symbol, logo, would look awesome, like right under the Falmouth Clippers logo on the second one. And then you wouldn't even necessarily have to, and even if they wanted to make it even bigger, but then have it be that, I just find it a little busy on your eyes, there's a lot going on. That's my only point on that.
Okay, Andrea?
I actually had a question that, it jumped out at me this time around where it hasn't before, and that is about the actual logo part, because they're also sponsored, and that also has changed over the years. What would happen if that changes again? Does that make any difference to our signage?
I think maybe that's why the year is on there. Like, this year, we're still a New Balance road race, but maybe something that was done in 1984, I think we were still under.
Yeah, it was SBLI.
It was SBLI,
They've
yeah.
been very particular about recalling certain things that were in circulation that, not t-shirts or things like that. But I don't know, I was just wondering if that changes.
I think that's because it's part of their official logo, they have to have it on there.
Is anything else that we have this logo on it?
The gym floor, right?
No, the what you're saying is the sponsored logo.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
The New Balance.
Yeah, I can't even see it.
Yeah.
Right. That, I don't, no, we don't have New Balance on any of the other stuff. So
Yeah, I'd rather
that's
just
kind of
see
curious
logo.
that New Balance sponsorship is on that icon there. You have more conversations, my thought is that it was the donated by Falmouth Road Race was the important part of the conversation.
We do not have to vote on this tonight. It says act upon it. So if we feel we need further information,
It may be helpful to actually see the rendering of
Yeah.
the sign that they want to put up on the field, because it's sort of hard to know which sign are they going to use, the fonts. It would be helpful to see the actual sign.
Just had that
For
request before.
for the way that, in keeping with the way that we've always done it, we always ask that we see the actual rendering of the sign so that we can base our decision based on actual information.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we've always done it. It's not that we're being ungrateful. We're so grateful. But I do think that if for no other reason other than to do it the way that we've done it before, we should see the actual version.
I think that's fair.
okay. So there's a motion to approve it, so we can table it? We will table it then.
Table the motion.
Okay, so that motion will be tabled. Okay, the next item on the agenda will be a first read on the Carousel of Light license. So we are not going to vote on it tonight. We are just going to get information. People have questions? Jim is here, so. Does any,
So one thing I just wanted to point out, this is a draft contract. Obviously, it is similar to, similar or the exact of last year, but I did pass out a request from Troy Clarkson about changing the dates of the contract. So just wanted to point out that I passed that to you. Tonight, he's asking for the setup to be on May 11th and 12th, begin operations on the weekends only, starting Memorial Day weekend on the 25th, and then allow weekends only until school is out.
So you drafted, this is yours, you drafted this?
No, this was
Or-
last year's.
This was last
This is last
year's.
year's.
This isn't the one I had for last year. This isn't. I don't know how you wanna do this, Terry.
Okay,
How do you wanna
I
do
don't
this?
It's the one that was given to me, so.
We were just reading this tonight and looking for information.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I said before.
So did you wanna tell us anything
Well,
before?
I might be able to enlighten you a little bit. Apparently it was drafted that way last year, but then we asked for changing the dates, and pretty much the same dates we've used for a number of years now. And that's because we like to open on Memorial Day weekend, because a lot of families come down that weekend and they want to, use the carousel and the playground. And we need a couple weeks to set it up. It takes about a week you gotta get a hold of State House, they have to come down, it has to be on a certain day, according to their schedule. So we like to set up a couple weeks ahead of time and then open up Memorial Day weekend like we have in the past. And then the rest would be pretty much the same weekends until school lets out. And then 7 days a week until Labor Day, which would be September 1st. And then we'd start breaking down the following day, which would be this September 2nd. We'd be out of there a few days after that. So I think it might have just been some miscommunication, or looking at last year's contract, but then we asked to change it, and you were gracious enough to do that.
I actually took a moment to see the differences before, what the deltas
Yeah.
are. It's actually that it adds the address of Mullen Hall, the actual physical address. It adds the days of operation, and it does move the license up in that section E. And then it does clarify when it's taken down as well. And it adds a section about the 990 tax to be current on that. So those are the differences. Then it's just a matter of what those days are versus what we're comfortable with.
There's one other difference too, because the contract from last year says that the licensee makes a donation to Falmouth Public Schools no later than September 30th, and this one has the old version, that it's 10 cents per ride. So was there any,
No, that must be the old version. No, it's been about a $2,000 donation last year, the last couple of years.
so I guess my question is, which version are we going with? Are we gonna
The
go
10
with the 10
cents rider, I think, was like from 5 years ago when we
Right,
first
it was hard to
started, and it just
calculate,
didn't,
so-
yeah, it was just, because we could do a lot of free rides, and we give a stack to the Falmouth Service Center and all the summer camps and the rec department and all that, so it's hard to keep track.
John?
Which actually a good segue, because in so doing, about the 990 info, did look up the 990 to see. One of the things I would suggest is I would actually like to see a greater percentage, and I brought this up last year, come to us, because I think, the original items that were suggested by yourself, when you first were doing it in 2014, you were saying estimated at the 10 cents a ride would be about $3,700. And then within the course of Mr. Clarkson, who I wish he was here to address it, I understand he can't be, was saying that after all the operating things are paid off, everything would go to the Falmouth schools. And actually, not to put you on the spot, just disclosure, I have the tax return here for 2017. It has that, in 17, it was 11, after giving us, the school system, 2,000, it was $11,000 of excess or profit, however you want to phrase it. And then the prior year was almost 11,000 as well, 10,005. So it's been 21 6 or something carried over for the last 2 years. So I was hopeful that when Mr. Clarkson was saying that, anything given over would be put over, that means we would be getting a higher percentage this year. And I was gonna propose that, as I did last year, that rather than be a percentage of rides, that you guys have to try to figure that out, which I don't want you to have to worry about that, is if it would be 10 cents a ride, so then that way, that 17, you made $62,000. Instead of being 3% of the revenue, which is 2,000 into 62,000, that would be 6,200. Or minimally, if you wanted to split the difference on that, if we did 7% of the revenue, that'd be 4,340 and a little bit closer to the original 3,700 estimate that you estimated.
Thank you for that, John. Just to clarify that $10,000 balance at the end of both seasons, that $10,000 goes to set up the carousel the following year. So without that money, we wouldn't be able to set it up. So
Well, you guys
it
don't
looks
think
like
that's
we
a
made
line
10 grand, but it just goes for the following year's
So it's not as a
expenses.
line item of like expense of labor for the, because I thought there was within there was different labor things in there too, no? Okay, so you carry that over for the cost, okay.
Oh, sure.
Gotcha.
And the insurance and all that. Yeah, so that's why with this $10,000 left over, and it's simply to set up for the following year. Now, Lord willing, we get a permanent location, we won't have that expense. There might be other expenses, but, that's something we can talk about at the time, because certainly want to support the schools, and I know how much you guys appreciate that small amount.
The only other question I had is within the course of it, again, we appreciate, afterwards and no one's, it's tough to say you're against the carousel. I mean, that's like being against a puppy or something, We're just working within the course of that, we're in the education business and how it then fits in within the course of that. I've never really seen the numbers of saying how much it costs the DPW to fix the area afterwards. And I just would like to know that as part of our equation. I don't know if you guys have kicked it around or, oh, you do? Okay, that's outstanding. Good. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, when Rocky was there earlier, he helped us out a little bit, but the last few years, we've taken care of that, cleaned it up, and
That's great.
fortunately, we get some nice donations, like the wood chips were donated, and things like that, but we cleaned it up.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
So I just want to clarify which contract that we're actually, looking at, that, because if this was what we started with last year, with just new updated dates, that wasn't, I think, what was finalized, because we had, I can remember the discussion, I didn't hold on to a copy of
Yeah.
what it looked like finally, but we did add in those dates, because they weren't going to be able to set up, and I remember the problem was, it came to us really late, but it's not coming to us late this year, but I think we're using what was not the finalized contract from last year.
So it came in our packet on the 22nd of May. So even if you don't have the old one, you can just go back and look at the online packet. That's why I said that.
So I guess I'm wondering,
kept-
was there a reason to go back to this one that wasn't the finalized one?
I think it's just a mistake.
Okay.
Don't you think? You just didn't
I
have
hope
the
so.
final.
I hope
yeah.
so. So we can adjust those dates, 25th, 26th, because I know last year when it came in, there was a concern at the meeting, and then Troy came in to visit the superintendent, and they worked out the details that it could be done earlier. So I'm assuming at this point in time that we're obviously looking at Labor Day, but we'll obviously like to kick off Memorial Day, and obviously we need a couple weeks for that to get up and running. So is it okay for us to make an adjustment from May 25th to 26th to, I think you mentioned the 11th or 12th?
12.
I would have no problem with that. I don't know what protocol means.
There's
Any other
also the
questions?
back one too.
Right.
Right.
About
So
the-
it's
the
more than
payment.
one thing we're gonna be,
And we're
that's
not,
not accurate.
right.
Either end.
So that's why we do first read, I guess.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
this is
So
what
we
this
just
is
need
for.
to
Purpose
update
of this
Yep.
first
So
read.
for
Good.
M, what, are we going to look for a donation or the 10 cents per ride? I'm not sure,
We had
the
a, we
donation.
had a flat fee
And you-
last year,
yeah.
so, yeah.
And it's a September 30th?
Yeah, I just emailed it to you, actually.
Now, what was the, just a question though, because I do think it'd be great to have it be a little bit more, you know, I mean, is there, the initial estimate when you had was gauging it from just end of June, end of the school year to Labor Day. And it was at the $3 a ride or whatnot. Did anything change in the thing that make that $3,700 go to $2,000 or?
Lessons learned, you know, we thought when we first started 6 years ago that we'd be able to do that, and we just found that the cost of labor and the insurance and all that, we just, you know, it was we threw out a figure and thought that would be a nice figure, you know, but it just didn't work out that way.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Now I'm moving on, I'm sorry. But since we're talking about any other things, I would also really like under letter E, where the dates are, it says the carousel will be taken down no later than, and whatever date we're gonna end up putting in there. I would really like to see something in there that says that it'll actually be removed from campus, not that it's just taken down. But, you know, we rely on this as like our operating document of what we expect, and if it's not in here, then you won't know that we expect it.
Yeah, we don't wanna leave it on the grounds all
No,
over,
I'm
you
sure
know.
you don't, but I think we
We
should
have to get it into
clarify
storage
that.
as soon as possible.
Right, that it's gonna be down and gone.
Absolutely.
Um,
They do it all the same day.
Just because the more clear we are in here, the easier.
You can simply say taken down and removed.
Yeah, something simple like that, just so that we're all, so what we expect is clear, and what you expect is clear.
Just one last thought on the dates, and I know this is just a first read, so we're just brainstorming it, but I'd like to know, you know, Nancy Ashworth's feeling on that too, if it's earlier, how that would impact.
Yes, I was
And
gonna
her
bring it
team.
up because some other members have asked about Nancy's input on this too, so.
And she provided that last
She
year.
did.
with that,
Yep, she
so
did.
So if
I
that's
think
changed,
she's-
we should know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
she definitely needs to be part of the conversation.
Okay, so mull it over and it'll
Great.
be up for a vote at the next meeting.
Thanks for coming so early.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it worked out great, didn't it?
Yeah.
Now we don't have to sweat so much.
Right, that's better.
Thank you.
Okay, so it would be time to conduct routine business. So we have the minutes of March 5th. Is there a motion to approve them? Alyssa just made a motion, a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, do we also need to approve? Oh. Hmm?
We should
Both of them at the same time?
Yeah. Okay, and then the minutes for the joint meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, so both sets of minutes are approved. Now we will hear the superintendent's report.
So on March 13th, I had another full day of the new superintendent induction program training. There's one additional one for the year. We had fabulous all-school band night. I've never seen anything like having all the bands come together, and I just, the courage of all the students was such a big crowd, and they were all just phenomenal, so that was very exciting. I'd just like to give a little shout out to Terry. I got to hear her. She was giving shout outs for everyone else, and I know she quietly said the previous French teacher, but I got to hear Terry read in French, and it was very beautiful. So, that was a lot of fun. I've never been part of a community read like that, and so that was just another activity that makes families so great. I will say that was good. Our English language learners, this was so much fun. They stopped in for lunch at the district office, and this was their civics tour of downtown, and they made us stop, and we, Dr. Tellier and I got to read to the students, and they asked lots of questions and had their lunch, so it was just a lot of fun to see students in our building. So, the all choral night was just as fabulous as the all school band night. I just shout out again for all of our music departments. It's just incredible. Our students are very talented, and our teachers are just absolutely fabulous teachers. We had a white ribbon day event in Falmouth. It was the first for Falmouth, not the first in Massachusetts or even on the Cape, but it was the first for Falmouth, and the administrative team attended that. And so just another, it's nice to be a part of advocating for the right events, and so that was nice to attend. We offered a preschool parent forum to discuss the possible changes classroom location for next year. The integrated preschool right now is on the table to be moved from T-Ticket to East, and we actually have not had any negative feedback about that move, so we'll have something in the near future of now the big plans since we've talked to every individual group and the communities at large. So, and we had our second vaping meeting, and that went very well. And we have our third on April 1st at Falmouth High School, and I just wanted to make sure everyone had one of these vaping and e-cigarette flyers, so I'll just pass those out if you're interested. Thank you. So this, so this is the Barnstable County Department of Human Services put this together, and so they have been participating, and we've just been having these flyers available at all the sessions, but just thought I would bring some tonight so everyone would have them.
Can you remind us what time on Monday?
6:30. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Lori? Okay. The next item on the agenda is a report from the chair. So I had a couple of bookkeeping kind of announcements to make. One is to make sure everyone has looked at his Corey timeline, make sure he's updated on it. It's phenomenally simple. You can stop in the admin building and fill out a form, and they call it in for you. And the other item is, I will just read this. It's about open meeting law. Town Council's office will be holding a training session in the Board of Selectmen's meeting room at Town Hall. We strongly recommend staff of each committee, board, and new committee board members to attend, as well as anyone who needs a refresher course. This will be Thursday this week, March 28th from 7 to 8, and I'll repeat, it's at Town Hall in the Board of Selectmen's meeting room, in case anybody is interested in that. Okay? Is there any committee reports? No committee reports. Okay. Any requests for follow-up information?
I have some follow-up questions.
Okay.
Could we, just for transparency to the folks at home that have been paying attention to the Corey procedure, could we spell out exactly the 2 levels of Corey that we do, how far back they go, and what state/states they encompass? Doesn't have to be right now, just.
Okay.
Speak to it.
Okay.
So the Corey is Massachusetts only, and the employee, all employees are every 3 years. The VIPS is every year, so anyone that's a mentor has the Corey done every year. And the fingerprinting, which all employees has done, is national. And I'm not sure how often, I'm trying to think, is that every 5 or 7? Is it 5? I think it's 5 years that we do fingerprinting for all employees. And that's nationwide, but the Corey is just Massachusetts only information.
Corey does go back decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You see-
Decades?
I thought it was just 10 years.
No,
No.
you take
This-
what's into account over the last 10 years. But
Okay.
we've
As
seen,
as practice.
Got it.
Yeah. Depending.
Yeah.
It's a case by case, I'm gonna say.
I'm curious, why would you have to redo a fingerprint?
You could be arrested.
Because something could happen from the,
You could be.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought the fingerprints are a record of your, I thought it was just, your data.
It's the same as a Corey, except it's national, and a Corey is just local state, right? It's just.
I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence for the parents and families that trust us with their most precious people, and to make sure that they feel safe having their children with us, and not that they shouldn't, but I just want to make sure, because there's been lots of talk and questions surrounding it, that we are completely transparent with what we're doing so that we can 100% assure people.
And I think, regarding VIPs, that they're definitely rigorous on that. And so, and I've heard of different things where it gets tossed back at the school level. So, someone sends out a request, and if this person is signed up to volunteer for something to help out, it'll come up as you don't have it, and they make sure that it gets done before they do. So VIPS is very good about following up on that yearly.
Along those same lines, a paper came home asking for parents to, for after-school programs, they were looking for parents to come in and do some of those programs. And on there it said that the parent needed to be fingerprinted, and I was kind of I was a little confused seeing that, and I didn't know if that's because they're actually teaching the after-school activity, if that's why they needed to be fingerprinted. But I would never want to discourage people from not teaching an after-school activity, because we need those parents to do that. And again, it's a $30 a fee for them to go do it. So I was kind of shocked to see it on there. So just to kind of.
Yeah, I will look into that, because it's my understanding it's all should be going through VIPS, and it's the Corey, not the fingerprint.
So that's something for.
I will make sure. I will follow up on that.
I think that's something for policy to look at, don't you think? We looked at it, but we could revisit it.
Well,
We could revisit it.
We said that we would do that, right?
Yeah.
When it came up a couple months ago, we said that the policy committee would, because it's in a section coming up for our review. And so that we were gonna take a look at the practice, but just want to, but if there's something out at one school saying that they've got to be fingerprinted, I'm just gonna match that with current policy.
I can tell you to East that we do the enrichment after school, and this year was the first year that we asked the parents and community members that are coming in to teach the enrichment classes. We had them get fingerprinted, but the PTO picked up the cost for that. If they were not already a teacher in the district and they hadn't been fingerprinted, the PTO picked up that cost.
Yeah, so just some consistency around that.
Just because we felt like if this person is one-on-one with a child, we need to make sure that they're.
In going over all the different member reports, I forgot to ask if Patrick or Joan wanted to make a report, or Sonia. No, okay.
We have our closing quotes in the back.
Okay.
I have two quick things.
Yep.
One is that precinct meetings start this week, so if you can go to yours or someone else's and make sure that we've got school representation in case anybody wants to tell us how much they love us asking for money or something like that. And then the other is that last night the high school hosted the screening of Angst, and it was spectacular, and it was packed. There were tons of people there, so Joan, I don't know if you had to do with that, but thank you if you did. And I just think that there should be more conversation about using, if not that tool, some other tools for kids, because it was, I thought, very appropriate for students to see what other kids going through anxiety look like and feel like they're not alone, and whether or not we could use that as a tool moving forward, I think would be spectacular.
Kudos go out to Alan Kazarian for that one.
Well, I told him that already, so, okay.
Andrea?
I'm done. No, I said it'd be quick.
I wanted to follow on to the report that Dr. Sandra put together as the follow-up to the questions about diversity. And it's very helpful to see this information, especially the the things that she's proactively doing in terms of recruiting. The one question I guess I had, that's probably for her, but maybe others might be able to address it, is I can see that in each of the areas that our educator percentages is approximately half of our student populations, pretty much across the board. It was amazing how much that aligned. And I guess the question is, where do we want to be? What are we aiming for? And obviously the recruitment is to increase that, but what do we want that to look like? What's the goal? So you don't have to answer
No,
now,
I'm just,
that might be
I think we
for her.
added in our strategic plan, I mean, we would like it to mirror, right, our enrollment, so our student enrollment.
Okay.
That it would be as close to that enrollment as possible, right, as we're trying to do the recruitment, so. I don't know, did that answer the question? I mean, that's.
Yes, sure.
And one more thing, I know everybody wants to leave. I just wanted to say I went to the civics presentation at the library. I think it was great, very eye-opening. I know there's a big push for civics, and obviously with the new framework, and but I also want to be very keep in the front of our heads about 8th grade especially. You know, they're going to be having a new big civics project to do, and after seeing this presentation on stress and anxiety, I think in 8th grade you have MCAS, you have the science project, you're deciding what you want to do as far as high school goes, and then throwing a civics project on top of that, having an 8th grader, it just gives me a lot of anxiety. So I just think we really need to kind of pay attention to that, and I think a lot of people have that in their focus, but I think just with the push, such a push from the community, I think we also have to make sure that we really take a look at our kids too, because developmentally, getting into your community and putting back into where you live is really something that happens later on in life, and as much as we want to incorporate that and help them do this, I do think we kind of have to go a little slowly and not kind of throw it all on them at one time. So just want to share that.
And I wanted to make a comment about, your comment. This year we've been so on time with all our meetings. Once in a while we have one that goes over. Please don't anybody feel, that everybody is in a hurry, but don't just ignore it, everybody. Okay? Anybody else want to say? Natalie, do you want to say anything?
In closing, I think we're done.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
Well, actually, I did actually, I didn't know if Patrick and Joan had anything. You didn't?
No,
Oh, you're all set. Okay, just a technology comment. Cindy's not here, but I do want to commend Cindy Tugas and Mike Falcone, because today we had the entire 10th grade log into their Chromebooks simultaneously into the Wi-Fi system for MCAS, and it worked. So that's no small feat, so I just thought I'd say that, sorry.
Okay, there's a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?